Hey everyone, it's Kitty, your host for Melody or Witchcraft. Just a quick note before you listen that there is a moment of explicit language in this episode. And while I have you here, can I just make a plea that you please rate the show, leave us a comment wherever you listen. Thanks. And now on to episode 15, The Great Diane Seuss.
I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a...
Hello, creative people. Thanks for tuning into Melody or Witchcraft. I'm your host, Kathryn Petruccelli. On the podcast, we hear a poet read a work of their own and an Emily Dickinson poem of their choosing that contributed to their work. We discuss poetry, Dickinson, the fluidity of time, and the scope and sources of creative inspiration. The past is such a curious creature, Dickinson wrote. Join us to find out how it can teach us about our now.
You know how dreary to be somebody.
After great pain, a formal feeling comes. The nerves sit ceremonious, like tombs. The stiff heart questions, was it he that bore? And yesterday, or centuries before? The feet mechanical go round, of ground or air or aught, a wooden way, regardless grown, a quartz contentment like a stone. This is the hour of lead, remembered if outlived, as freezing persons recollect the snow. First chill, then stupor, then the letting go.
That was today's guest, Diane Seuss, reading Emily Dickinson. Diane Seuss is the author of 6 books of poetry, including Modern Poetry 2024, a finalist for the National Book Award and the Griffin Poetry Prize, and Frank Sonnets 2021, winner of the Los Angeles Times Book Prize, the National Book Critics Circle Award, and the Pulitzer Prize. Seuss was a 2020 Guggenheim Fellow, and she is a Chancellor of the Academy of American Poets. Her 7th collection, Althea Poems, is forthcoming from Grey Wolf Press in 2027. Welcome, Diane. I am just so excited to have you here.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me and for doing this podcast. This is important territory for me and for all poets. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been such a great experience so far. Tell me which elements of the Dickinson that you love show up in this particular poem.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. I was looking at it again. I've taught this poem for years, and every time I teach it, I experience something new. And it was always interesting to teach it because I would send it home with the students to read, and they would come in and go, well, what in the heck is going on? And then when we would read it line by line, word by word,
Yeah,
it opened up, it bloomed for them and became important to them as it was to me. So with Dickinson, she really asks us to slow down in ways that a lot of people aren't used to having to do in these times. And so that opening line, I mean, she's so mercurial, that opening line itself. After great pain, a formal feeling comes. And there's so, I see these layers of inference in that line. So it reminds me of being at a funeral and how everybody acts at least in the States or in certain groups, with such formality, even though what you want to be doing is scream.
Right.
My father died when I was very young, and my mom, who's very cool, but she handed my sister and I each a hanky and said, "Here's a hanky, but try not to use it."
Wow.
And yeah, there was just this repression of grief. And so there's that formal feeling of funerals that Dickinson develops through the process of the poem. Then there's, and this came to me later as I taught it more and more, and as I relied more and more on form itself to get through life.
Form to get through life.
The formal feeling then became, the need for form.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I love in this poem is that each word, and this is so true of most of her work, has multiple interpretations or inferences, and you can sort of choose your own adventure,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, the nerves sit ceremonious like tombs, which buttresses that, the nerves, even the body itself has that ceremonial formality that we associate with tombs. And the heart too is stiff, the stiff heart
Yeah.
questions, so that the nerves, the form, the ceremonial thing. And then this was it he that bore. And of course it's capitalized, but she capitalizes all the time. Does she
Yeah.
mean
Yeah.
Jesus and the crucifixion? That's the usual interpretation. Does she mean the
Mm-hmm.
heart itself, or the person themselves, the dead person? Again, there's multiple ways really of bringing that in. And, so did he bear that pain? And was it yesterday or centuries before? In such a compressed way, she gets at that experience of grief as, did that just happen? Was it 9 million years ago? Was it today? And
Yeah, so some of that formality is the shock, I guess, that is within the body. Which is a protective thing, as I guess is the ceremony, because you can really notice that too. As much as we need ritual and ceremony, those things do keep us divorced, or at least further maybe from emotion.
yes.
So you're sitting at the funeral, here's a hanky, hope you don't need it. Yeah.
Yes. Try not
Yeah.
to use it. And I think
Yeah.
it's a particularly certain kind of cultural approach to death where, there's no screaming and falling on the casket and all that stuff that you really want to do.
Yeah.
It's actually what my dad's mother did at the cemetery. She tried to get on the casket, and I was horrified. I thought it was so weird. But who wouldn't? I mean, really, if you're going with what you feel, that's what a mother would want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So then the thing I love in this poem begins with the mechanical feet. And by the way, usually this poem is printed differently. That is,
Yeah.
have you noticed that in this middle
Yeah, I
section?
have the other version, but I've learned to never flinch at a different version of a Dickinson
Well,
poem.
I looked
Yeah.
back before we did this because I've never felt it sounded right to say the
Mm.
feet mechanical go round a wooden way of ground or air or aught. That doesn't sound right. I look back at the original manuscript and it's like this. So somewhere that got screwed up. But anyway, so you have the mechanical, and here's this Dickinson thing of ground or air or aught.
Mm-hmm.
It's so compressed that it's
It's
like jazz.
covered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's, okay, so they're of the ground or of the air or of ought, what you ought to do, right? But she doesn't explain it. It's just ought. And
Yeah.
then we get to wood, a wooden way, regardless grown, regardless how you got there. So you have wood, and then a quartz, contentment, like a stone. And God, that moment slays me. A quartz, contentment, like a stone. And that's really where, if this were a sonnet,
You're at 9. Yeah, that would
yeah,
be about the
it
turn.
it would be the turn. And then we get to lead. So we've got machine or mechanical, ground, wood, quartz, stone, and then lead, the hour of
Yeah.
lead. And lead is the heaviest, of course. And then that
Mm-hmm.
sort of thrown off, remembered, if outlived, you know, if you make it
Yeah.
through it, to remember,
Here she's like, oh, I've got some commas. You want to see me use a comma?
yeah, here's a couple. This complicated ending as freezing persons, comma, recollect the snow. So you're freezing to death and you're remembering the snow, even though you're in it, I assume. And then there's the first chill, then stupor. So you're remembering the act of freezing in the moment of freezing to death. There's the
Mm.
chill and then the stupor and then the letting go. And that then the letting go at the end is one thing I learned from her, is that in the language and the lineation and the syntax itself, the freezing person lets go of life, lets go after the stupor, the letting go, but also the grieving person
Mm.
lets go, not of the grief, but of the dead person. And so
Mm.
that letting go just holds so much, so many dimensions, that letting go. So, okay, what did I learn? The development of metaphor. She's not one for all these crazy metaphors. The image palette here is slim. It's mechanics, ground, air, wood, quartz, stone, lead. So it's all these elements.
Mm.
She
Uh-huh.
doesn't name the dead person. We don't know the speaker's connection to the person. She
Right.
gets rid of so much narrativity in her poems. She scrapes it away, and then she lets this image or these images unfold. They're slim, and there isn't so here's the story behind this loss. She takes all that away, and what we're left with is the power of the image, the syntax, and the incredible rhyme there at the end, snow
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
letting go, which, often her rhymes are not so perfect. Um,
Sure.
so, yeah, I learned so much from what she leaves out and
Yeah.
what she allows to remain. And the compression serves the feeling. That
Yes.
that's incredible.
Yeah, it's both dense and unrelenting, I
Yes.
guess, in that compression here. The tombs too in the first stanza,
Hmm.
ceremonious like tombs. I also looked at that and thought, okay, well, this is also grief visible.
Hmm.
This is a marker, literally, of the loss. As you know, and some of the listeners will know, I live in Ireland right now, and I live very close to an abbey, the ruins of an abbey. Thank you, Cromwell. And there is a very, very tall, the tallest monument within the abbey walls that on a tour once I learned was for a 20-year-old daughter who had died And I don't know anything about her. I don't know anything, but I know her family had a lot of money because they built this thing. So it's like you use what you have. They had money. They didn't have their daughter. And so here, I'm going to build this thing as tall as I can. And there it is. I still see it. I still see their grief.
Yes.
Which is kind of fascinating. And we share in common the early loss of a parent. I also lost my father quite young. And I feel like, I don't know how you sense that enters your work besides obviously subject matter, but in terms of your relationship with the past and your relationship with time.
Yeah.
I feel like, when you've had that early loss, it's not an abstraction, and the past is, it's that presence of absence that
Yes.
becomes so big.
Yeah, well, I'm right with you. And I I think that's why I started writing, to sort of walk my way around that absence,
Mm.
to interact with it. If you don't have presence, then you find a way to interact with the absence. And
Hmm.
that's really the story of all of my work, if I look at it through a certain lens. Yes, I think that those of us who lost a primary figure, you said it was your father too.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mhm. It becomes so formative in the way you see and your personality and how you hear language, how you
Mm.
receive images or details of the world. It's really everything. Also, for me, it became a way of continuing to have a kind of relationship with a father, except the
Uh-huh.
relationship is through language. How about you?
Well, for me, and I also really wanted to ask you about this, about place, because I know you are very tied to your place, and obviously Dickinson is nothing if not a poet of place.
Yes.
For me, that loss shows up in the fact that I write incessantly about home and belonging.
Mm.
But I don't put it in my bio, for example. Like I'm sort of this sort of, I don't know, this sort of floater.
And here you are not living at home and is, far from home in Ireland.
And folks in Ireland, it's hard to explain when they say, "Where are you from?" It's such a loaded question. And
Hmm.
and I've lived in half a dozen states. So yeah, so it's because now it wasn't in this bio that you gave me, but that's probably just because I bully people into shortening their bios. But I know often in your bio you include, that you are from Michigan, that you are from rural Michigan,
And raised by a single mother.
and raised by a single
Uh-huh.
mother. Yeah, which is something else I really admire in your work, that address of class.
Hmm.
Absolutely, because it's one of those things that's kind of, you see the pattern when it's broken, and it's not talked about so often. It's kind of like saying culture when we mean white culture, right? And
Yes.
if we don't say anything, we just assume it's upper middle class,
Hmm.
etc. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's very important to me to delineate that part of who I am because it affects everything. It affects how I speak. It affects where I find myself angry and where I find myself amused, and then
Yes.
idioms of my people, like my mother, wish in one hand, shit in another, which is in a poem in Frank's sonnets,
Yes.
and I compare the sonnet to that. So yes, it's crucial. And for Dickinson, she's so selective. I admire that. I'm finally learning it because when I started writing, it was like whoosh. Everything was on the page. I told the stories. That's what
Yeah.
younger writers need to do. And I set my students up to start there. But as I've gotten older, I leave more and more out and I
Mm.
am more and more selective. And I learned that from Dickinson in many ways. I admire it because it must have been so tempting to tell more.
Yeah.
But she's an abstract thinker. When we think about, Gregory Orr has a great essay on the poetic temperaments.
Oh, yes. I know the one you mean.
Wonderful essay. And he talks about imagination as one of the four. And one of the things I talked with my students about is that there's concrete imagination, and then there's abstract imagination that he doesn't really talk about as differences. But I think she's an abstract imagination poet in a lot of ways. And then a structure poet who also takes great pleasure in upending or undermining the structures that she creates. For instance, using hymn meter and then blowing it up in a line because she can,
Right.
you know.
Right.
In that way, again, I think Alva Canal wrote of her that there's almost an underlying syncopation like in jazz. So there's
Yeah.
the overt meter, and then there's this undermining, underlying syncopation. You know, you think about her sitting there in Amherst. How did she come up with this? My guess is she didn't think about it, she just did it.
Well, and then maybe she saw that she did it, and then just like in an individual poem, you might notice something and then go back and revising and be like, "Oh, I'm going to lean into that. I'm going to highlight that. Look what the poem, where the poem is taking me." It's almost like she figured out what she could do, and then she was just delirious with the energy of it. Or it's, I guess, just like we're talking about our biographies can't help but inform 100% what we're putting on the page. In a certain way, it's like her rebellion within her life choices were basically coming out in the lines of the poetry as well.
In every choice. It's just incredible. I mean, I wish I could just see her eye to eye and say, my God, girl.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
even in this poem, I bet what you said a minute ago about you sort of notice what you're building and then you work your way into it. I bet she noticed, oh, I'm using these elements. I'm going to work with that. And
Yeah.
then this is the hour of lead. Or was the first thing that came to her, this is the hour of lead, this grief, and then work her way back from it? I don't know. We can't
Yeah, I mean that
ask.
does sound like the line that comes to you at 2 a.m., right? And if you're
Yes.
smart, you get up and you write it down.
And then I was reading something about this poem that some think, if we think literally with her, it's always kind of a mistake, but this could be true that, it was written during the Civil War, that her brother had lost a friend, I think, in the
Yes.
war.
Fraser Stearns,
Yes,
yes.
yes. And the hour of lead, lead bullets even. Is that where it came from? But of course, the everyday poet would say Fraser and, shot with the bullet and all that stuff. She doesn't, all of that
No
is
interest.
no interest. It is the hour of lead remembered if outlived. That's something I take from her too, because there's that arch sort of moment in her poems, that underplaying. Remembered if outlived. She doesn't say, I don't think I can handle this. I can't live with this. It's like the part of her that wrote to her chosen confidant mentor, do my poems, what is it, live,
Breathe.
breathe.
Do they
Yeah.
breathe?
Do they
Yeah.
breathe?
Yeah. To
And
Higginson,
it's
yeah.
almost a femi kind of performance, of
Oh, so performative. Yes.
remembered if outlived, tee hee. I just love to see a poet's personality and strategy for survival come through in every choice they make. Like you're saying, the
Right.
rebellion comes through in every choice. The kinds of choices we might talk about in class, and the students are like yawn, syntax, like line breaks, all of that stuff. But the emotion and the personality guide those choices. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, well, and then just how it reverberates around the context of what else was being written at the time. And I think
Yes.
that's what is difficult to relate to younger people sometimes, but yeah.
Yeah, it is because you kind of have to be willing to know history to be thrilled as we are. by reading.
Yeah. I mean, I think if I met her when I was younger, I probably wouldn't have liked her. But if I met her now, man, BFFs.
Yeah, yeah, it takes time. You know, I remember the first time I saw anything having to do with her. Of course, nobody ever taught her when I was growing up. But my sister had an Emily Dickinson book in these weird sliding doors on her bed headboard. And
Okay.
I was
Yeah.
sleeping in her bed for some reason, and I looked in there thinking, oh, maybe there's a candy bar or something. And it was Emily Dickinson. I was intrigued. I was little, but I was intrigued. She asked for an evolution.
She asks for an evolution. Ooh,
Yeah,
that's good.
yeah.
This relates for me to the idea of cultural memory because the questions I'm most interested in asking are always the ones I don't know how to ask. But I'm interested. This kind of comes back to place, but even in a more specific way. So when, for example, in the case of Dickinson, the museum is in fact the house,
Yes.
and her material world is what we have to walk through. I feel like there are, from touring there, of course, there were the people that showed up in white dresses and were weeping before they even got through the door. But there would also be the other people, the ones that thought they should come.
Yes.
Or the ones who, had a minute because they just dropped their kid off at one of the colleges, on Parents' Weekend. And so, they can't go home from Amherst and tell people they didn't go to the Emily Dickinson house. So they should go to the Emily Dickinson
Uh-huh.
house. And then there they are. So this idea of kind of a like cultural memory, where does it serve us and where does it kind of leave us out in the cold is kind of where I'm
Yeah.
going. But if we're just thinking about home and place, are we more invested? Are we more nosy about someone's life? Are we more inclined to want to know
Mhm.
if we can look over the garden wall as opposed to, I don't know, be in a classroom, for
Mhm.
example,
Or just read the poems.
or just read the
And the
poems?
poems are difficult. We can't deny it. Anything we can have to help us open them up is helpful. Seeing where she lived was helpful to me because it explained, I don't know, aspects even of her formality.
Yeah, that makes
It,
sense.
it helped me understand that. But also, I'm a sucker for, oh my God, she slept here. Oh my God, she looked out of
Mm-hmm.
this window.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Kind of coming from the other side, I guess I'm thinking too, like I can think about going to Steepletop. It's closed to the public at the moment. I hope they're going to reopen it, but this is Edna St. Vincent Millay's home.
mhm.
And I don't consider myself too goo goo gaga, but I walked in and there next to the door are her little boots.
Oh my God.
They're tiny, tiny, these gorgeous little lace up numbers. And I just gasped. It was just this instinctual,
Hmm.
I don't know, it's the energy that's there.
Hmm.
It's something happening that maybe lets us bring it into our sphere.
Yes,
Lets them be people.
yes. And was the stiff heart questions, was it, what is it?
The stiff heart questions. Yeah, was it he that
That
bore?
bore or yes, and yesterday or centuries before. And you do get that sense when you're in their space. Was this yesterday or
Yeah.
centuries before? Am I breathing her air or is she all gone? And that's the question children ask. My niece died very recently and she was
Yeah,
only
I'm so sorry.
49. You saw that. And her younger sister keeps saying, where is she? Where'd she go? That's the
Wow. It
question.
sounds, yes, it sounds exactly like, I mean, Dickinson would walk around the house after her father died,
Hmm.
asking just that question.
Hmm.
And I'll have to find the exact quote.
I
This will
would
all
love
be in the
to
show
see
notes.
that.
But
Yes.
oh, she was obsessed.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
How
Yeah.
long before he or after he died did she die? Do you know?
I think he died in 1874. I'm going to double check that, but I want to say 74, and then she was 86. So it was quite some time. I mean, she was a
Mm.
caretaker for her mother for a long
Yes.
time, because it was 1 year after her father's passing to the day that her mother had a stroke that incapacitated her.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're such a resource. I want to like squeeze you and have all the stuff you know come out flowing.
Can I invite you to read the poem of yours that you brought?
Sure. Yeah. Well, so this poem comes from my collection, Frank Sonnets, and my definition of sonnet changes a lot through the course of the book. There's some rhyme, there's some with no rhyme, there's some metrical patches and some not. But all of them are 14 lines. In this poem, the lines are very long. And all of them do contain a turn and something like a couplet. So that's the formal thing. When I set out to write Frank, I decided to write a memoir-ish thing in sonnet form. This is focused on my sort of soulmate, Mikkel, who's on the cover of Frank's sonnets. And he
Mm.
died of AIDS when he was in his 30s. And that's all I'll say at this point, and then we can talk about it after. How's that?
Great.
I saw a little movie of a person stroking a small bird with two Q-tips, one held between the forefinger and thumb of each hand. It tipped back its head to receive the minor tenderness, which to the bird must have felt like being touched by a god. For a moment I knew what it would be to feel at the mercy of love, small scale, the kind shown but not spoken of. I was afraid to touch you. I was afraid of the lesions you'd described to me over the phone, their locations and the measurement in centimeters of each. Jesus marks, you called them. Also, I would be prepared and unafraid or less afraid, but still I was afraid of dying like you were dying. When I first arrived, I looked so long into your eyes, you shivered and ordered me to look away. You were imperious in your dying, yet courtly about my fear. You understood, as if I were a child afraid of lightning storms, which I am, having at age 10 been struck. Out of the blue, you said that once you were dead, I'd never be able to listen to Blue again. Joni Mitchell's Blue. Not just the song, but the whole album. It was a minor curse you lay across my shoulders, like a fur dyed blue. And so I listen now in defiance of you. In the listening, the pronoun shifts. We are listening. There is no death.
Thank you. Yeah. I feel like with something like the AIDS epidemic, which is so huge, naturally the only way we can understand it at all is through looking at small individual experiences of
Mhm.
it. And so it is, yes, of course, a tribute to that time and a tribute to the person you loved
And
as well.
with so many younger people now, there's no understanding of that time, of what it was like to equate sex so firmly with death, you know, that
Mm.
sex could well lead to death. And just the masses of people that we lost. And it's so
Hmm.
interesting with COVID, which had similar kind of devastations because of politics. I think there was so much denial that it's like everybody's just gone on. We lost, hundreds of thousands, millions of people. And
Hmm.
and yet the denial mechanism is so strong now that we just,
Yeah.
go to Applebee's.
Yeah,
Um,
we are not processing. Yeah, we
no,
have not processed. And I found myself, I found this particularly with visual art. I'm attracted over and over again to art made during COVID, even when I don't know initially, like that's when it was made or that's why it was made. Yeah, there's something very big that's unprocessed, I think, culturally.
I agree with you. And at the time that we were experiencing AIDS, there was so much activism. There had to be because people were dying because of what politicians weren't doing.
Yeah.
So none of that is in the poem. That, again, as with Dickinson, except I'm not nearly as firm about it in this book, but you leave out most of the stories in the white space beyond the margins of the poem. But still, just reading that out loud to you, I was so struck by how much narrative is in the poem. I mean, that was sort of the
Mm.
nature of my assignment to myself in this book, is that these would be memoir-like, pretty unabstracted, and yet focused within a block of 14 lines. So,
Mm.
they're doing both. But I am very aware as I read it, after reading After Great Pain, a formal feeling comes, how much this is still storytelling. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a mode, and it wasn't Dickinson's mode. But I think there are connections. I wasn't imitating or writing after her at all. I mean, that
Mm.
poem, when my ex-husband left our family out of the blue, the first thing I said was, I want my mother. And the second thing I said, nobody was here right then. I have a son, but he wasn't here right then, was After Great Pain, a formal feeling comes. That I said that poem out loud. And
Mm.
so it lives in me. I can't say, oh, I was trying to do what she did. I can't. It's not how I operate. And she didn't operate like I do. But the presence of that poem lives in me. And I think,
Yes.
especially in this poem at the end, the resolution per se, when he says, out of the blue, you said that when you were dead, I'd never be able to listen to Blue again, Joni Mitchell's Blue, not just the song, but the whole album. He did say that. It was a
Mm.
minor curse. You lay across my shoulders like a fur dyed blue. It was sort of a dare. And
Yeah, it seems a gift now,
I
but
know it
yes.
does because now I
Yeah,
listen to it intently. And so I
I bet.
listen now in defiance of you. In the listening, the pronoun shifts. We are listening. There is no death. And that feels, on the feeling level, similar to Then the Letting Go
Hmm.
in her poem. Um,
Right,
it's a way of exiting the poem that is like a release. There is no
right.
death. Something else I learned from Emily in her poem, After Great Pain, a formal feeling comes. She almost always begins a poem with a declaration.
As the reader, you're going, yeah, you're either thrown back or you're leaning forward because you're like, all right, what's this one going to say next?
Yeah, and yeah,
Because yeah, they are so bold. Yeah.
and it's sort of like Whitman's writes in Song Myself, basically through the experience while you're reading this giant poem, our atoms are shared. What belongs to me belongs to you. And So when somebody is willing to make, I have a little essay on this actually, a bold declaration as the opening line that shows no doubt. After great pain, a formal feeling comes. You follow her, you know? It's like, okay, I know that. I've felt that, you know? And
Oh,
so,
I'd love to link that essay.
okay, I'll send it
I'd
to
love,
you.
yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
great.
After great pain, a formal feeling comes. And I don't get there until the last line. There is no death. But it is a declaration. Because it's certainly arguable. You can argue with her formal feeling. You can say, when somebody dies in my life, there's no formality, you know, or you can say to me, of course there's death. Death is all around us, you know, but in the span of that poem, there is authority in
That's
what
right.
I
Yeah.
declare and
Yeah.
what she declared. There is no death. That's what poems can do. It can make death
Yeah.
go away.
It's a universe of its own.
Yes, it is. In that block of 14 lines, I get to say it. And she must have felt that strange freedom too, and that strange authority, you know.
Can you talk a little bit about the repetition in your poems? So all the instances of fear and afraid and unafraid,
Mm.
4 of blue, 5 of death, or 6 if we count dyed blue. Can you talk about what's happening there, the effect that you're hoping for?
You know, I was aware when I read it first that the opening with the little movie of a person stroking a little bird with 2 Q-tips, it tipped back its head to receive the minor tenderness, which to the bird must have felt like being touched by God. That felt almost like a preamble to the rest of the poem. And then for a moment, I knew what it would be to feel at the mercy of love, small scale, the kind shown but not spoken of, which rhymes with love.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with that line. We
Mm.
can talk about that line later, but yeah, I don't know about preamble. This is the podcast where Diane Seuss critiques her own work. I mean, because you've also got. I mean, well, the little movie. I mean, come on, how much do I love that description? And then minor tenderness, which is of course a bookend for the later minor curse
Yes.
that Mickle sends with, what you're never going to be able to listen to again.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I would argue against the
Okay,
preamble of that line.
I believe you. So then I'm just trying to get to, I was afraid to touch you. I was afraid of the lesions you described to me over the phone, their locations, the measurement of each Jesus marks you called them. Also, I would be prepared and unafraid or less afraid, but still I was afraid of dying like you were dying. Okay. So what's the impact of that on you?
For me, it's a circling down. It's
Yes.
a
Yeah.
it's a pulling in this. There's this kind of magnetic field around that repetition.
Yeah.
It's not so much the emphasis, the shouting out, but it's a pulling in that happens. And it magnifies, I suppose, that fear of being at the
And
bedside.
I was afraid. I, and I'm ashamed that I was afraid, but I was. And, you know, there's that secondary aspect of things where he was sort of showing me, teaching me beforehand what to expect. It was that courtliness in him, you know, toward me that was in our relationship. Also, I would be prepared and unafraid, or less afraid, but still I was afraid of dying.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it is the formal feeling. You see the speaker sort of trying to hold it together. So also, I would be prepared and unafraid. But then it starts to crumble, or less afraid, but still I was afraid of dying like you were dying. And then I back up into my formal feeling. When I first arrived, I looked so long into your eyes, you shivered and ordered me to look away. I'm aware when I read that line, arrived and I and eyes speak to each other, and then shivered and ordered. They don't rhyme, but there's a similarity in sound. Um,
Mm-hmm.
at the
Yeah.
backdrop of a scene, the thing that makes it not just like storytelling is the sound. And that's true of Dickinson as well. The sound with her structures, she borrows from the hymn in church. That's what she was used to. And so to both borrow and usurp is power.
Mm.
You were
Mm-hmm.
imperious in your dying, yet courtly about my fear. You understood as if I were a child afraid of lightning storms. And then here's that moment that is sort of like one of Emily's tee-hee moments, which I
Yeah,
am.
the aside.
Yes, having at age 10 been struck. End of sentence. And of course, that begs like a question, even, but I don't follow it. That's enough.
Right, right. Yeah.
Return to the scene. Out of the blue, you said that once you were dead, so said and dead, I'd never be able to listen to Blue again, Joni Mitchell's Blue. So out of the blue, there's blue, not just the song, but the whole album. It was a minor curse you lay across, and then a fur dyed blue. And so I listen now in defiance of you, you, blue, blue, blue. And so, yeah, the effect is the blues, the blueness of the moment, my blue mood, the blueness of that song, the repetition of blue, and then moving into this rhyme with defiance of you. It gets, the musicality of what I'm referring to, the song, but also of the moment. There's this strangeness in moments like that where they are kind of aesthetic masterpieces as well as terrible suffering.
Mm.
Then to go to these three short sentences. In the listening, the pronoun shifts. We are listening. There is no death. Those little declaratives. And just in that moment in the poem, that the pronoun choice transmogrifies the death. There is
Mm-hmm.
no more you and then me. There is we. And when I listen, Nickel, it's we, and there is no death.
Yeah. Is it important to you to be known, to
Mm,
be remembered? I mean, here we have, right, the book that is memoir in verse,
mhm.
Frank's sonnets, and we have, Emily and what we can speculate about her and her taller feet, right? Do you know that line
Yeah,
where she says it's one point to Susan that if she could make she and Austin proud at some point far in the future, twould give her taller feet.
I love her. Yeah.
I know. Is it important? Like, do you want to be within someone's we?
Mm. I don't think I want to be within someone's we at all, as in an intimate sense.
Hmm.
That that died for me
Hmm.
with Nichols' death and with my divorce after 17 years of marriage. Something shifted, a switch flipped. But to be remembered as a poet, the last poem in Frank is all about that.
She grabs the book. Hold on. Let me.
In your hymnal, it's in, yeah.
Page 130, everyone. We will link. Oh, talk about repetition. Oh, yes, I remember this poem now.
Read the last couple few lines.
I happily kissed lips. Do you want me to start there?
Mhm. Mhm.
I happily kissed lips that kissed Basquiat's lips. I know a man who said he kissed lips that kissed lips that kissed lips that kissed lips that kissed Whitman's lips. Who will say of me, I kissed her? Who will say of me, I kissed someone who kissed her? Or I kissed someone who kissed someone who kissed someone who kissed her?
That whole poem is about, will I be remembered? Will I be remembered through my work? My remembrance image is the kiss, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Who will say of me, I kissed her? I'm ambivalent about that because there's an ego sort of in it. I mean, I think about Keats, who in my book Modern Poetry is one of the stars.
Yeah.
And you know, he was what, 23 when he died of tuberculosis, which is just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And he felt he would never be remembered. And it was on his tomb, here lies one whose name was writ in water. And look how we remember him. Look how important he is. I mean, he's so important to me. Not just, you know, I love his poems, what he managed to create in such a short time, but his suffering is important to me. I feel him, you know. And so I'm ambivalent. I hope that I will be remembered in my work, for my work. But I guess what's it to me when I'm dead? It's not like I'm hovering over the reader, you know. That was me. That was me. So,
But if you
but
could,
you know,
would you do it?
I probably would. I probably would.
Diane Seuss, thank you so much. This has been really great.
This has been wonderful for me. And again, I appreciate the work you're doing and this conversation. I feel like we know each other a little better. Better than not at all.
Better than not at all. Well, I secretly knew you because just watching you and reading you, but
Now it's mutual and it should be mutual. So thank you.
we can do coffee.
Awesome, baby. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us today from Melody or Witchcraft. You can find out more about today's guest by Googling Diane Seuss. Our theme music is by Emma Wallace. For complete show notes and photos, listen through the links at melodyorwitchcraft.com. You can also find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, and elsewhere. Regardless of where you listen, support us by commenting, liking, reposting, recommending. We'd love to hear from you.
How dreary to be somebody